Fiona with regards to implementation. She's been a recruiter and trainer of youth for 35 years. Okay. So she works for Fiona and
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
That's
Fiona,
no, I see that through, I think you and Alan, they make sure these studies are bad. It's like happen next time.
Then it's to the next meeting. We can fit that right on. I think Sean's arriving at 1:30.
Yeah, of course. Or
trouble with the after 365 crash just
I assume comes.
Do one that's
We will make sure that it's the MXD.
I'm not sure.
So we might as well kick it all off. Welcome everybody to the Planning and Regulatory Committee meeting, 17 March 2021. This meeting will be recorded, subject to the recording being of suitable quality and our makeup being up to scratch. It will be made available on the Council's YouTube channel via the Council website. There are emergency exits, which you're all well aware of, or you can find me. If we need to evacuate the building, use one of the exits of the central outside by the playground. Stay off the swings. The assembly area until the building has been confirmed clear. I don't believe there are any apologies. And are there any conflicts of interest to report?
No.
There are no conflicts of interest. There's no public participation. Hence, there are no actions arising from public participation, which there wasn't. Is there any extraordinary business that anybody wishes to raise at this stage? And has everybody had a chance to read the table alcohol control Bible that was distributed sent out yesterday?
Yes.
We'll do that at C3. Now, we are considering the minutes from the meeting of 16th December where I was an apology, but are there any corrections needed? We have a mover that these be accepted as a joint record. Brenda, and seconded Alex. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any comments on the content of the minutes themselves? Okay, well, we'll move on to section B and consider item B1, the dog control report. Do I have a mover to accept the report? Councillor Fox, Councillor Lee, paid to all those in favour?
Aye.
Okay, questions carried. Mr. Mead, you want to talk to us about this?
So we've set, we proposed the fees for the 2022 financial year. There's just a couple of really minor changes in regards to it. That we proposed a very slight increase to entire dogs. So we're trying to create a more incentive towards people owning D6 dogs, which generally causes issues for entire dogs. So, but the difference is only $2 and $4, which is very minor, but creates that separation and incentive for others. Part of that is obviously the penalties go up and you can increase those no more than 150%. So the slight increase in those costings come through that. There are two new costings that we've put in there, and one is we've called a seizure fee, and that's a technical part of it. We've been doing it in the past as an impoundment, but if we actually just seize the dog, it's under a different section of the Act, and so that fee just reflects that as opposed to the impoundment, just in case that we get a technical question around that. So it's the same as a first impoundment, it's an $80 fee, but it just means that technically we're doing it under the right section and the fee reflects that. The second one is in regards to microchipping. So we've decided as a team that we would offer a service where rather than go to a vet where they have to make an appointment. And that's not generally the same day that we want to release the dog. Part of the regulations or the Act requires us, we can't release an impounded dog without it being registered or microchipped. So currently we can get the registration, we do that as a territorial authority, but currently we have to go to a veterinary service to get that done, and because they're a commercial entity, their appointment system is based on their need, not ours. So we have upskilled our staff to be able to provide the service. We're also reflecting it in regards to a price point that is more of a service for us. It covers our costs, but it's not extra. We're not profit making on it. But it means two factors. Is one, that the customer can pick up their dog, register it, microchip it all on the same day without having us to maintain it until it is appointed with the veterinarian to get microchip, which incurs further costs for them. But it also means that we can actually go out as part of our education service and offer a service where we'll be microchipping, checking for microchips, and if someone doesn't have a microchip dog as required under the law, we're able to provide that service, but we've reflected a price point that we think most people are going to find quite palatable. So we've just put that in for this year, going forward as a service that we're offering. Good. Other than that, questions?
Yes. Councillor West, you got first.
So is the council, my concern is touching somebody else's dog. How is the council situated legally to be able to do that? Is that?
So what was the question?
By microchipping a dog and touching someone else's dog, is the council putting themselves in a?
We believe not. It's a practice that's right throughout the country and includes our aligned councils as well. So Carterton and Marsden both do it as well. And the dog becomes under our custody, control and custody as soon as we pick it up anyway. We have a legal obligation of not to release it. And so councils have looked at it from that point of view as that to streamline and give that customer service. Don't believe there's any liability in regards to how it is. The process of microchipping is pretty stock standard now. It's set to practice, and we've upskilled our competency of our staff. So, all right.
Yeah. So if I can just explore this seizure versus impounding. So seizure is you take the dog, but you don't necessarily impound. You give it back to the person prior to actually going into the pound. Is that correct?
Correct.
So does that seizure have any impact on the? I noticed there's not a sliding scale of seizure like there is for impounding. So if you have a problem dog that's constantly seized, do we increase the penalty or?
We would look to impound it. So if the scenario that we've come up is we've had a situation where there were multiple dogs on one property. We've gone there and it's been on a private property where dogs have interacted and got in, and neighbours have called us. So we have to do something to eliminate the problem. So we've seized those dogs, contacted the owner who was just at the supermarket. So rather than pound it and for them to release it, which costs extra, this affords us that ability to just seize it for that moment. If the scenario was longer than that, we would then impound it and we would go through that.
So you're self-regulating.
Yeah, so subsequent issues with the dog will push us down towards that impoundment to sort out.
Does a seizure count with regards to the number of interactions a council has with a dog prior to it becoming a real problem after the third impoundment?
So in regards to whether we disqualified an owner and whether we'd go down that 3 within 2 years. It's an interesting point because I believe, and from the top of my head, the section requires an infringement notice or conviction thereof. I'm not sure whether the seizure would go down there. I'd have to double check on that one.
Yep. Well, my point would be that it probably isn't quite as serious and you're able to manage that, therefore it shouldn't necessarily count towards a 3-strike sort of issue with the dog.
No, and we've taken a philosophy of very sort of customer-centric philosophy in terms of how we're interacting with the people. So the recidivist owner that comes to our attention, we have a different plan for those that have just found them in that accident or just that first unique situation. I think that disqualification would throw out different problems that we're going to have. That answers it.
Thank you.
Councillor Connor. A couple of questions, Rick. Do we have a register of dogs that we have determined as hazardous or what's the term?
Menacing?
Menacing, yeah.
Yep, we do. We have, goes on the national dog database as well. So menacing, dangerous dogs are registered, and that goes with the dogs.
Okay, and the second question I had is seizure fees and impounding fees. First impounding exactly the same.
Yep.
So if impounding is a step higher, why is the fee the same? Because
No, it's
I
not.
presume impounding has more cost with it.
Yeah, so the seizure is just an anomaly that we sort of come to where we've seen that it's within, there was a very short duration between the owner turning up and where we had it, and to impound it meant that we had to take it away. So this is just to reflect that situation where we've got that anomaly where we're actually seizing it, called by the police or a neighbour, where there's an instant altercation where we can actually seize the dog, i.e. take control of the dog, remove it from the situation without having to go to an impoundment, putting in an impoundment.
Shouldn't then the impounding fee be higher than the seizure?
Well, it depends, because if we pick up a wandering dog for a first offence, we don't want to set it so high that someone who's had a really great dog for over a period of time, it's just the tradies open the gate and the dogs come out, we've impounded overnight. The reflection shouldn't be punitive greater than a seizure. To me, it's the sort of two different scenarios, but to achieve the same outcome, if that makes sense.
Okay. And my last question on this is about microchipping. If we're trying to encourage microchipping, why don't we give an incentive in the fees towards microchipped animals? So
microchipping is part of the law. They must be microchipped unless they fall under the exception, which is the working dogs one. The microchipping service still costs us, and it's not to create a disincentive for good owners who automatically do it, but it's actually to capture those that we have an ability for us to do it in a more immediate time frame. And we would run events much like our other councils within the region to actually encourage those to do it. If we put a blanket within the registration fee, those that have already done it are subsidising those that haven't.
So, no.
If I understood your question.
No, my point is, if we want to encourage microchipping, surely we should be giving a reduced rate to the registration of dogs that are microchipped, therefore rewarding those that have actually followed the law.
That's one way, but I've still got to meet the public-private levels to ensure that what the user paying is actually meeting the requirement of my percentage. If I gave too many discounts in terms of what it is, I'd run foul of that. We see this as a better option to say, okay, instead of going to the vet where it's going to cost you $40, $45, council will do it at a discounted rate of $20 to be able to then get it. It also means that we can do it when we pick up a dog to release it as fast as we can for those that are out there. We assume that we have responsible owners and they know the law and they will go and microchip and register their dogs register them each year and have them microchipped over the age of 3 months. This is just an avenue for us to be able to, the ones that we do pick up that we find are not microchipped, whether they're from our region or others, we have the ability to actually fulfill our requirements of releasing the dog as soon as possible back to the owner.
Okay, and councillor.
Quick question, Rick. Have you got any idea of the percentage of dogs, urban dogs, that are microchipped?
Ooh, microchip, they should all be microchipped.
Just going back to my fellow councillor. give some sort of?
On the microchipping, no. This year, I know with the registrations, we've had 98.7% of our registrations of known dogs, which is a fantastic result. But it's quite big lobbying from Federated Farmers in regards to working dogs, but it never included pig dogs that I could see as being an acceptable one.
Nothing in the act about dogs.
So I don't have a solution as to a pig dog because the definition of a working dog, I believe, and I don't have the act in front of me, is primarily for the herding
Of stock.
stock.
And stock was defined as semi-domesticated
Yeah,
animals. I did follow this through, and it came back to me from MPI that it was entirely up to the local council to make a determination on the definition.
right.
That it's up to us to then put it into our bylaw if we want to extend the definition.
Yeah, I believe the section, it comes down to make a resolution of what the definition of that extension can be. That is one of the other issues with farms, and is that they register the dogs under working dogs as well, but they're not the owners of the dogs. And so what we found in researching not only this part as well was who is actually the owner of the dog. And so the shepherd owns the dog, so they should be the owners that register as opposed to the farmer. The farmer can pay for it. But we're finding the transient nature of shepherds, we're finding dogs moving around without registrations coming through. But specifically to yours, my understanding is a submission or resolution to council to extend the definition would need to go through.
Perhaps if I could ask that in the future, perhaps it's an action item that we put some thought that whether or not it's manageable or not, whether there might be some wording that might satisfy your operation, come through to council.
Right. To extend that definition of it.
Well, I don't think it's an immediate action, but certainly it'd be nice to know that we've considered it and said, actually, this is too complicated, and you're going to have to continue, or there is a way we could do this easily.
Wasn't that defined to just pig hunting dogs? Or?
That's the only issue I've seen arise.
And another question from Councillor Fox.
Hi, Rick, just a quick one. Could you remind me when the registration period is for dogs, please?
First of July through to the 30th of June.
Okay, I was just looking at the public notification, and there's a statement in there that there'll be public notification, no less basically than a month before registration.
Correct.
So there is a change in fees, and I just wonder if that's giving people enough time or notice that there's going to be a change, that's all.
Interesting.
I wonder if there's some other vehicles that we can use to, as well as, to let people know.
Through you,
Have we finished with Rebecca's question?
it's related to Rebecca's question.
Rebecca, have you finished?
I think I've given Rick some food for thought, so.
Right.
Yes.
Brenda.
Through you, Mr Chair, under the LTP, we actually discussed the raising of fees and the adjustment of fees. I'm just wondering if it's covered under that.
I'm actually thinking about if I was a dog owner, which I'm not, but if I was a dog owner, would a month give me enough time, given everyone has pretty tight budgets at the moment, to be able to allocate a different fund for that, that's all.
If I could possibly comment on that, I think we're talking $2 here, $3 here. We're not talking hundreds of dollars or a major shift in the theming of dog registration. So I don't think it should be an issue.
Okay, and Councillor Clancy.
Two questions. I didn't think that the new fees came in until the 1st of July.
Correct.
That we did this at this meeting so that it gave you time to put the public notifications out before the fees went up on the 1st of July.
Correct.
So we've got now from the end of March, so you've got all of April, all of May, all of June for people to have notification that the fees are going to go up. So I think that would be notice for people to be aware of the increase in fees. And,
It's just one of those things we would have planned for, that's all.
yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
The second question is, when you're looking at that seizure fee and that first impounding fee, there is a perceived my perceived feeling is that there would be more work in impounding a dog than just seizing it and returning it to its owner. And I just wondered, because this is the first time that we're putting that fee in, if we made the seizure fee slightly less than the impounding fee, that people would perceive that we are doing good in the community. We're not charging them as much as an impounding fee, even if it's only $5 or $10 less. But on the other hand, I don't want to belittle or underrate the amount of work that the officers do to seize and get a dog back into its owner. But if you seize a dog, you don't have to take it over to Featherston. You've got it in your vehicle, you know where the owner lives, you can go around and return that dog to the owner and talk to them about the fact that you've seized it. I felt that there was a perceived lesser amount of work than contacting the owner, taking it all over to Featherston or wherever the pound's going to be, and
So
the owner go over. I just wondered if, just as it's the first year of putting that in, that we sort of put a different margin on that.
so it's not about the work or the type. It's actually just it's actually cleaning up the session that we're actually doing it under, rather than. So the reason we've aligned it with the first impoundment is we actually seize the dog, and we have the opportunity of contacting them. The amount of work is probably more under a seizure because they're generally dog-on-dog attacks where people would have walked away from, and we've had to go in there. We've got multiple officers actually going in there.
Okay.
But it's just that when it's a scenario that if it's at the owner's property and they're en route, we've actually cleared out and made safe the public and generally the children that are on the property. So rather than go and impound it and then go through that process, we wanted a mechanism where that under that act, under that section, we actually have a fee to recognise the work we've done. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So-
it does. I was thinking more of where the dog's reported roaming and that's picked up by the officer.
Yep.
I wondered if that was where you were going to use that seizure fee, or
No,
it's
no.
when you go onto a property and pick a dog out of an unsafe environment.
Yeah, so part of the change that we've implemented recently is that if we pick up a roaming dog and it's microchipped or it's got a registration tag, we run that. And if it's within, close proximity, we'll actually go and deliver it to the people. We don't impound it. So we actually give them what I call the first get out of jail free card. So it means we can actually interact with the owner and say, was this purely an accident that the tradie that they had and they left the gate open? And generally they're really great. We've never had an interaction and therefore we're not penalising them for an accident, for want of a better word. That's why we're trying to get the increase in microchipping as well, so that we can identify these dogs as fast as we can to avoid owners who are really great owners to then be in the system in terms of impounding. We're actually using all the resource. So we use that, what I call the first interaction, is that get out of jail free. We can interact with them. We can then make contact with the owner, find out exactly what it is. And 9 times out of 10, it is someone who's just left the gate open and dog's done a run. I didn't think it was fair for us to impound it, charge them $80 plus that when they've been really great. So it's a sort of reward for being a responsible owner, having the system set up. Does that answer the sort of
That
question?
clarifies tremendously, and I understand, and yes, there would be exactly more of that. So I'm happy with that.
Alice, do you have another question?
Yeah, just in terms of, Rick, can you confirm that when a person registers their dog, that the microchip system is then updated with the dog's being registered?
Yeah, so when they get their dog microchip, the vet should inform that the 15-digit number, you give that to council, we enter that into the database against them, both in terms of our register, but also on the national database as well.
So that every year, do you update that and say, yes, it's currently a registered dog?
Every year, our registrations go through, yep. So we
And then
know
update the microchip.
Well, the microchip will always be on there, so the microchip doesn't change each year. Once it's in there, once we've registered it, we'll know that that dog's got a microchip.
So I'm just reading part of the act here that says dog not wearing proper label unregistered. So any dog not wearing a collar or having current registration shall be deemed to be unregistered until proven otherwise.
Yes,
If we microchip the dog, does the microchip have the dog registration
no,
on it?
no. So the microchip is purely the 15 unique number, the number on it. It's about the size of it.
Yeah, no, but we update it, but it's a microchip, so
Then it goes through the National Dog Database and now register as the microchip number.
which gives the owner and phone number.
Yeah, I believe it just record, as soon as we look up the microchip, we can look up the owner's details.
And when you get your bill each year, it
But yes, I know it says it's microchip, but my point
gives
is,
the number.
why are we not, what's the point in registering a dog with a plastic label on a collar?
Yep.
Which can fall off from time to time, and if I look at my dogs, for example, tied them up the fence, the collar comes off,
Yep.
they're running around, they're microchipped. So then I would then have to prove to the council that they are registered if it was picked up, whereas if we update,
No,
Database?
the microchip will go and register, the show it's registered as well,
no, but it doesn't say it's registered for this year.
but we know. So it comes in each year that we know the dog's registered. That's how we pick up non-registered dogs after the 31st of August.
Not from the microchipping system.
No,
So we're running, so my point is we're running two systems. We're running a microchip system across the country, and we're running a local dog registration system, are we not?
No.
Or am I missing something?
So the microchip number and the dog registration go onto our database and the National Dog Database. So that information's on with the owner.
So then my answer to the original question is yes, it does get updated that it's a registered dog every year.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The problem with microchipping is that the government's made the exceptions. So we get farm dogs that we don't have microchip numbers and they don't have a label because farmers won't put the labels on for various reasons. Therefore, we pick up a wandering dog, we have no knowledge where it is, whether it's a pig dog or whether it's a working dog. That's our biggest issue. If the law said all dogs must be microchipped, it'd make our job a heck of a lot easier to be able to return dogs faster to their owners.
One more question.
That's a really good one. So with regards to pig dogs and they're kind of like roaming around, they get picked up and you go through and microchip them, then perhaps eventually all dogs will be registered? Or are we not registered, were we not microchipping pig dogs and cat dogs and stuff?
So a farmer's dog doesn't need to be, they're exempt under the law. The question would be whether we ask them, did you want us to microchip it or not? That's their call. If it's a pig dog, which is not a working dog, so it doesn't get the exemption, if we contact the owner within 7 days, we will say we can only release this dog to you if it's registered and microchipped.
So what we're saying is that we have exceptions for farm dogs
Correct.
and they won't get microchipped, but all other dogs will.
We can't force them to be microchipped because the exemption under the law.
Okay.
So it's the law that says the exemption. Yeah.
We would highly recommend to farmers,
So
given that they spend a lot of money on their dogs, that it's worth the $20 to microchip their dog, but that's their call.
And the point that Alex was making is that the submission was saying the purpose of this pig dog is not for recreational hunting. It's not a recreation. It is in this person's opinion, a working dog because it keeps the borders of his farm free from pests and fence damage and that kind of stuff. So his argument is actually an important and integral part of my farm management to have a dog performing this function, therefore it's a working dog. Right? That's the head of the pin that does.
It's a very grey area, isn't it?
Of course, it's a bit of the law.
And it's probably situational, which is why it's a tricky one to actually come up with
the
a really.
law defines quite specifically, and there was good debate in Hansard's about actually defining a working dog as being one for the purpose of herding and mustering and those types of activity, not just general activity on a farm that someone in their own opinion would class as being working.
And principally, that's the important part of it. So it's not just your family dog that you then on the weekend go and take out pig hunting. So that's where people get caught up as well.
Yeah. Which is a
value issue on it. Yeah, that's a very good last question. And as part of operations, you get tricky points raised to you where we have to get legal clarification. And we have had in the past legal clarification provided for the instance of a resistant owner thinking that their dog falls into the category of being a working farm dog, when in fact our view was backed up and backed up by a legal opinion that they didn't. So again, the point about pig dogs, you would normally expect those to come under the umbrella of recreation-based activities for a person's interface with the dog. But these things are posed to us, and final clarification comes through legal opinion and seeking that.
So just be clear, Russell, it's not a legal opinion, it's actually the court found, not just a lawyer giving advice. The court actually made a determination that was actually appealed to the High Court, and the High Court supported that determination from the lower court.
Was this the 9 Chihuahuas incident?
Picnic.
Something like that.
The conversation's going a little bit beyond.
Yeah.
I'm just clarifying, it was it's not a.
This is taking complex, in practice, quite complex to administer and fraught with difficulties, and unfortunately the non-compliant owners can be very difficult to deal with. So we take our hats off to your Rick and your team. You know, you've shown us that you're approaching this through education, encouragement, and enabling before enforcement, and I think that's the way to treat these things. Any last comments at all?
Can I just ask? Yeah, I've got one last question, and it's about in paragraph 3.2, the financial considerations. Talk about 60 to 70% private good and 30-40% public good. That's how the fees are sort of work out the fees. How do we come up 34? I'm interested in the public good split. Why are ratepayers who don't own dogs paying for part of their rates for the public good of people who do own dogs?
So this is the when you do your ratings review, rating and that's exactly the what you go through for consents for every regulatory activity. You make a determination on what you see as the private benefit versus the public good, and you set basically a percentage around those. And then the other principle then follows is that it becomes as much of a user pay regime for that private benefit versus the public. But the mechanism is your rate payers, as the ratings review that we will do this year. You'll be starting off all that.
Okay, so we will discuss.
Yes, we'll go through, and it applies to every single activity that you charge a fee, and setting your administrative charges. You're required by the Local Government Act to actually apportion what you consider on what basis to be the public and the private benefit. There will be a written record of that. It's not just saying we think it's 30, 40, whatever.
Okay,
Robust debate around it.
Sorry, yeah.
This hugely robust debate.
Sure, yes.
Yeah.
I'm aware at the time, I think we've done this one together with like a dog to the bone. And we're asked by officers to recommend to council to adopt proposed dog control fees for 21-22 and authorise council officers to give public notice of the fees. Councillors, proposers, Rebecca seconds the second. All those in favour?
Aye.
And that's carried. Now, for a change of climate, we move on to climate change.
You've been practicing this.
We've got a report regarding draft advice to the Climate Change Commission. Do I have to move it to accept? Thank you, Your Worship. And seconded by Councillor Clenso. And welcome, Mel. Oh, we better vote on that. All those in favour of receiving the report?
Aye.
Thank you. Carried. Okay, now we've got this report, Mel, and before we go on, may I express on behalf of this committee the gratitude of yourself and the others from Carterton and Masterton who have reacted to this and produced such a comprehensive submission after careful analysis of all the factors. It's a very nice piece of work. So could you pass that on
Yeah,
to
sure.
your colleagues?
Oh, thanks.
Okay, it's item B2. Floor is yours now.
Thank you. So Climate Change Commission is an independent organization, and they aim to advise the government on how to mitigate to climate change. So this first report is the first piece of advice, and we have this great opportunity to give a submission to really discuss about it and give a submission. So that's what we did, because Carlton, Marsden and South Warraba are quite similar. We thought that having a joint submission would be a good idea, because we have the same kind of issues, and we could answer on the same way. So to do that, I have to admit that Marsden did most of the job since I was away for a while. But I know that it has been shared to everyone. Sorry, I was sick side today. So the draft submission was sent to all elected members in Warraba councils, and we've considered all comments. And that's now you have the final submission to discuss about. So if you have questions.
Did you have many, you sent this out on the 4th, I think it was. Did you have a lot of feedback from councillors from the different councils with regards to the structure?
So from Carlton, I had none, and from the south, I had 2.
That was all.
So,
Yeah.
so that was pretty easy. So yeah, and indeed, the loss of active land is one of our main concerns. But really, on this report, we all think it's a good report, but we had concern, especially for us rural districts, because, for example, on the transportation, they want to electrify the fleet, and it's really good. But what about people living really far away from everything? It may not be easily feasible for us. That was one of our concerns, and the other one was loss of productivity, loss of land with high productivity for planted forests such as pine. So we really tried to raise our concerns about these issues.
Just a quick question. In the consultation question 21, 22 and 23, 21 and 22 state that the 3 Wairarapa district councils have no in-house expertise to comment on the changes to the NDC. Yet we agreed to them telling us how to do the reporting in question 23.
Yes, so we don't have the skills in-house since it's really high level. It's really experts from the climate. And in the 3 councils, so Carlton, Marsden and South, we don't have this kind of skills.
But we're being asked to do the reporting for them. So how can we do reporting if we don't have the skills for it? So that was question 23.
And the reporting.
So question 23, consultation question 23, reporting and meeting on the NDC. Do you support our recommendations on reporting and meeting the NDC? Yeah,
because so reporting would be doing our greenhouse gas inventories, which I already do.
Okay.
And as such, we can give our knowledge of our emissions.
But then we're
so
agreeing.
That's reporting, and we agree on meeting the NDC because they have the skills, they have the knowledge. So we just agree that they have the knowledge, and we listen to them.
So in the previous 2 questions, we say that we don't have the expertise, but then we're agreeing to doing the work.
Because they have the expertise, so we're agreeing.
So we're using their expertise?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Listen to their advice, really.
I think there's a difference between forming an opinion based on scientific evidence versus monitoring of the end standard.
I think it's just the way that the questionnaire was worded to us. So there's a bit of confusion. I don't know, that's great.
Very good report.
And I agree with the transportation, by the way.
You have a question?
Yes, no, I think it's a really good report, and thank you for putting all the time and effort into it. I know it's your passion, and yeah, it's just great. I've just got a couple of typos and things, so if I could go through those with you afterwards, rather than unless you want to sit and do it all now. I'm happy to do that afterwards if you like.
Yeah, sounds good.
Where would we be without Pam?
Sorry.
I just had a question. Mel, this just kind of, it's a question and an observation, and it talks to question 20, in particular when it says that our country requires a consistent methodology in how we measure progress, and that most local authorities have community inventories and GHG carbon footprints. Are we doing enough in that space? Are we collecting enough information, or are we just collecting the bare minimum of information? Because there's a balance between collecting information and doing something with it, which is the next part to my question.
Yeah, I know. So that's the thing at the moment. There's no framework. So everyone in the country is doing different way to do inventory. And so you cannot compare anything because everyone has a different method. So I guess we're doing as much as we can, but a framework would be really valuable, so we could have a consistent method across all councils to know exactly how to do, rather than just finding what suits us.
What can I keep going? What do you feel with your skills and expertise that we should be doing, and potentially is there an opportunity for us to lead a different conversation in local government around that? I mean, we're a small local authority. I know we're a little bit resource strapped, but we also have the opportunity to maybe do some cool stuff. And climate changes, I think there's a real lack of understanding about what climate change really is and what it means for us. So if we can be doing more in that space and be seen to maybe leading the charge, how would that advance getting some science which can be compared and then actually some change as a consequence of good data?
Yeah, so at the moment, since we're following the Ministry for Environment guidelines, I'd say we're on the right track.
Okay.
It's not something coming from who knows where. It's a good source of information, and it's a good way to follow good practices. And also with Wellington Region Climate Change Forum, it's not a working group anymore, it's a forum. We're discussing on how to collect better data on the wastewater treatment plants, because that's a big question mark with high uncertainties. So we're discussing about it, seeing if there's opportunities for us to have better understanding of them. So yeah, it's at the very beginning of the work, and it's we're working on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think when we were doing LTP consultation with you, I think we challenged Melanie saying, are we doing enough? But we certainly and you said, yes, we're on the right track, but certainly I think we'd love you to challenge us.
Yeah.
To make sure we are doing the right thing.
Yeah, I might just comment on this point that Councillor Jepson approached me yesterday. He's not a member of this committee, but he does represent the agricultural sector de facto within council, and he is very pleased with the recommendations you've made as well. Any more questions from Melanie? All right, well, we've got two recommendations here we'll do them both together. The remaining ones: endorse the submission and recommend to council that the submission be approved. I have a believer of both, as worship and Councillor Fox. All those in favour?
Aye.
Motion's carried.
sorry, can I just mention something? So council won't be able to adopt the submission before it goes to the climate change commission, because it's on the 30th, the council meeting, and the submission needs to be sent on the 28th. But we already spoke with the commission and explained the situation. We think there is very low risk since all the councillors have been, we discussed with everyone already. And the commission said, yes, if it's not adopted by a council meeting, we can take the name out of the submission.
Okay.
Yep.
We're reasonably confident that it will get passed.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4.
I don't think you've got too much of a worry.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Melanie.
Yeah.
Sorry, Karen.
Very well behaved.
Yeah, very good. And so on cycle. Just like that.
Yes. Okay, moving on now to the planning and environment report, item C1. We've got it in front of us, and Russell, would you like to talk to the high points first?
Councillors, so we were up to speed on this.
Sorry. Yeah. Dave, thank you, Councillor Hay, seconded. Received the report, Councillor King, so all those in favour?
Aye.
Councillor Dissent, that's carried. Sorry, thank you, Russell.
Councillor, so South Wairau spatial plan, you had heavy involvement of that, so your heads are in that space, and we're having a workshop this afternoon, and we'll actively prepping key information to go out for consultation during April to set our 30-year future along with our LTP decision. For the Marlborough Southeast Growth Area, you know that that's part of the growth assessment work in terms of sorting growth areas for the towns, and that's in the mix. District plan review. Councillors Gibson and Plummer also actively, they've had attended a recent meeting where we've had the plan review committee. So the district plan review rolls on, and in terms of dealing with the improvement and improved relevance of the district plan for the future now, noting that it has to be reviewed. So we're working with Boffa School, and we're taking an approach of looking at full review for key parts, those chapters, for key chapters, targeted review for some other chapters, and minor review for those lesser important topics.
Kind of started there at that stage. Just on that, GP and I are going to meet with Russell regularly before those meetings, just to go through the papers and make sure that we're all on the same. So prior to explain to us any issues or changes that might be being promoted, so we're not going in blind, as it were.
Can I just ask a question, Russell? So apropos that, are you looking at the height restrictions across, well, certainly South Wairau, to prevent another 15-metre apartment building?
Yeah, I raised that as an example at the committee meeting in terms of the 15-metre height limit for commercial zone. Greytown example with heritage buildings and the 130 odd petition that was received. So that balance between heritage protection and provisioning, commercial development, but what's the suitable height limit for our towns into the future. So that's been raised, and it'll be actively addressed, and a decision will have to be made on that.
Is that an area that we could have an exemption for South Wairau or do something different compared to Masterton or Carston, for example?
We can take that forward for when it comes, when you look at making a decision or finding a position on it, it's that balancing heritage with commercial development potential.
If you're looking at the current district plan, there is a specific part that deals with Greytown Heritage, the Greytown Heritage Zone in the district plan, so it has its own specific rules.
Not enforceable.
That's what it is, because I'm sure that they're not really appropriate to anything.
I would like that part is being looked at, isn't it?
Yeah.
How deep it's going to go, I don't know.
That was the problem with that proposition. He was quite legal to proceed with 15-metre height building. So the heritage rules are rather loose. And I think I've always been told not enforceable. Very hard to enforce.
So do we as a council need to have a discussion around that to give you some sort of direction as to what our feelings are on those height restrictions for the three towns in the rural community as well?
Good question, Pam.
Could I suggest that when those chapters come up for review, we come back to council and say, how do you want to represent this? Because if we do that now, this is a 3-year project, so perhaps we do it in a staged approach when it's coming up for discussion. So it might be a better way to do it.
I think it's council, we will have the ultimate say anyway, coming for us for approval on those changes. Is that correct?
I think what Pam's saying is the opportunity to have input into that before it comes to us. And whilst Alistair and GP are representing us, it's fantastic, they're well skilled to do that, but there are other thought processes that might need to be incorporated.
So I think
Yeah.
let's have a discussion in council about the methodology for reporting back to form those opinions for Alistair and GP to make sure on a regular basis we're informed going forward.
And that we've got the chance to.
In fact, if we could get Suzanne,
Right.
once that process is underway, that it becomes a regular council agenda for a certain period of time for them to report back.
Okay, anything else on just district plan review? Okay, Russell, all yours.
Dark Sky Reserve. The 2 submissions received, we're negotiating, discussing with the commissioner. I've still got to have some further discussions with using a commissioner to hear the 2 points of concern. One, just to give councillors some decent information. One was from Warragul Sports Artificial Surface Trust and Genesis Energy, so we've got to hear their concerns. And because it's a council initiated plan change, you want a degree of independence, and so you want a commissioner involved in those discussions. I thought I had someone teed up, but they've said, oh, please see another colleague within the resource management group, see who could help you. So I've just got to chase up that other person in terms of getting that underway, but there's potentially only 2 sticking points, but it's a matter of having good discussion before you get to your final decision.
So the original 10 seem to have been satisfied within the proposed plan. Yeah. That's positive. It's very good.
Review of notable trees. We're trying to bring that topic alive. We had an appeal which was subsequently withdrawn, so just trying to activate that. I've gone back to the commissioner that heard the topic for seeking clarification that we can activate that plan change. I haven't heard feedback. I think I will have to send another email to get that, extract that advice from the consultant, so we can do our final bit on that. So that's what is involved on that topic at the moment, and I still need to do with it.
Okay. And do you have are you able to give any sort of timing on when that?
I hope to get that clarification within a week or 2. Featherstone, Brookside, we had the applicant come in, and Kendall and I met with him, so he's going to be, like the note says, pursuing a more standard density. So there were some discussions held, and we're just waiting for his approach to us. So it's a site that's got still a small portion of land that to be developed, and the applicant's putting his thoughts together before he comes back to us. So that's
Any indication what size average lot the standard density would be? That's 500.
they vary from, as a loose answer for you, anywhere from around 200 to about 300. Some are slightly lower. So his original application was a lot
About 100.
a lot higher density, and so if you're looking at the development overall, it is a mix of higher density and more traditional. So he's taken that route to as a result of all the discussion we've had with him.
Thank you.
Orchard Road subdivision. Funnily enough, I had a meeting with since Godwill's passing. Kendall and I had a meeting with Tomlinson and Carruthers, who were this topic for the Orchard Road subdivision was dealing with contaminated soil on the site, and we had given them extended the period to get their site work sorted through to the 30th of March, through a separate meeting with Tomlinson Carruthers. They said they'd be actively working and sorting out things on the site. So that's another issue just to for me to check on and resolve, but had a cooperative meeting in terms of working relationships with Tomlinson Carruthers and working together. So they had asked for that meeting, so that meeting was held. They're doing the site work, so that means I'll have to check with them as to the final completion.
I think they've actually finished.
Sorry, what was that?
I think they've actually finished. There's no more.
There's nothing there.
Yeah, no, they were there for weeks, moving a lot of soil.
Well done, Russell. And the next topic is the proposed combined dog pound. Last time the topic came up for planning and regulatory, there was strong direction given as to pursue further more detailed costings so that you can be provided with information on which to make a future decision. So a tender has gone out. Recently it has had a low rate of approach back. This matter is being directly led out by the Carterton district and Dave Gittings, and they've got a procurement person there as well alongside Dave. So we're waiting for the tenders to come in. Now the tender process will roll through to April, and we're just making the point within the report that we're wanting the committee to be comfortable, if they're comfortable in continuing the original plan for a combined pound if the tenders come in close to the original budget. Should the tenders signal a costing which is excessive or quite high, then obviously we'll present that back for councillors to decide, and we may have to revisit what direction we want to go on.
Linda.
When I hear the words that if they come close to the tender price you're wanting, that price is not made public though, is it?
No.
I just want to avoid a tractor incident at Masterton we're experiencing.
Joyce, could you just refresh my memory? What the original budget was that around 500,000?
We shouldn't discuss that in
Oh, sorry.
public, so for that very reason, because we're out to tender. So.
Just like I get a question. Or was that a voluntary twitch?
We had looked at figures to try and realise what the likely cost is, so that we could get a good result in terms of providing for future
That's fine.
animal welfare that we're required to meet through legislation, but also get a fair result.
You've said here, Russell, you want the committee's views as to its comfort in continuing the original plan for a combined pound if the tenders come in. Now, that's slightly hypothetical. Alex?
On that point, I think this has dragged on a bit, and I can understand why with timeframes and tenders and everything. But I think it's very important for us to bring this to a resolution that we can start providing legal obligations with regards to dog pounds. So I would encourage council officers to present to us a solution that will actually fulfil our obligations once and for all.
Should we frame that as a resolution or recommendation from this committee?
I think that comment covers it, certainly from an action item, but it is, I would rather it was sooner rather than later. So we can finally make a decision. I don't know what everyone else thinks.
I mean, there was broad agreement at the combined council services meeting, was that 2 weeks ago, to see if we can proceed forward. And all three councils are currently not complying with the law, so it is quite a concern. And how long has this been going on? For 3 years, 4 years, longer?
Quite some time. Okay, so full speed ahead, Russell.
Thank you. Well, just the note, we're trying to get an effective result and a cost-conscious result, not just for our accounts, but also, the needed cards and have their own fiscal situation. So we'll bring you those results.
Right, then moving on to the rest of the report, Russell. Anything you would particularly like to bring to our attention, the stats and KPIs or others?
Nothing to raise.
Any questions on any of those points, Brenda?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I get a bit frustrated, and is it because we have to have these figures in there? But they date back to 2018, some of them, sometimes even earlier. So it's kind of like I look at this and going, oh, that's really great for that year back then. I just feel that I would rather see current and relevant information rather than outdated information. Is there a reason why we're seeing this?
Is there any particular aspect?
Well, if we have a look
Could
at
I help with that? I think what Brenda's referring to is there are a number of measures. So these are key performance indicators. They're the ones we set in the that were set in the past LTP annual planning process, and a number of them related to the NRB survey as the means of collecting the information, which we've had a lot of, and so that was done at that time. So if you look at the very first one, that's exactly what Brenda's referring to, is that we have not done, and councils has been well aware of the reasons why we didn't do that. But all the other measures, so that's the explanation for those, Brenda. So we're obliged to report them, but that's
so you're obliged, okay.
Yeah. So these are key performance indicators that fall out of our LTP and annual plan, which you are revising and changing and amending for this long-term plan. But some of them don't change. But the one I think is actually important, Russell, is on the consent turnaround. You'll be aware, of course, of the sad event of the loss of our senior staff member in that. The team is still managing to process consents within the statutory timeframes and keep work going, which has been no mean feat. So, I just want to let you know, because there was a period when I first started where we did have turnover in that planning team, and our average response times really took a dive for a variety of reasons, but mostly because of staff turnover and things. So we are keeping on top of the processing of consents, even in that tragic staffing situation. So I think that's quite an important one to emphasise at this point.
Councillor Fox, you had a question.
I do. That relates to the compliance activities in the Sounds by of alcohol, which is great that Rick's here because he may be able to answer this question. I see we've got met the 100% target, which is really cool. However, there's just a statement in there I'm a little bit confused about. It might just be I'm not reading properly for detail, but in the COVID time, or when we were in the lockdown phase, it says that the inspector undertook compliance from an advisory role remotely. Are we back to normal practice right now?
Yes, under level 1, we're back to.
Cool.
So with level 2, level 3, it's just the distancing and we might really put the operators in.
And no one was open anyway. Yeah. Well, some of it they wouldn't be. Just out of interest, have you had any feedback from those licensed premises around people's behaviour around liquor?
Yes.
It's not a trick.
I think for especially for South Wye, we've been very lucky in that we've picked up a lot of patrons from other areas that have seen this as a spot to come to. So from that aspect, they've seen a lot of vibrancy, and therefore that's really great for them. Part of that is also just the pressure points in terms of ensuring the clientele that's coming over are accepting the South Wye way of doing it and not accepting, if I can put it, the 1980s way, where it's about booze and get trashed and that. So we've over the past years, we've done a lot of work in getting people to responsibly drink and enjoy our region, and the operators have taken that to heart and really pushing that. So they have seen a bit of a slight difference in the clientele that they've got, and they're educating those. And we undertook an accord, I'll call it an accord. It was a gathering of operators, and Hazel ran it with input. And we discussed, how was it going? What are you finding, pressure points and different things like that. And what we were trying to encourage was a collective voice that they could talk between themselves in terms of ensuring that one person declined at one area wasn't going to the next vineyards and causing us issues down there as well. We have seen the age group drop, so quite a few of them have come over the hill and done the parties, and so it's been a bit of that as well. But overall, it's been really great. It's good, like what they're doing. And we've just reached out and said we're not necessarily your police, but we're here to help where we can, but also we can become a voice if there are circumstances or things that we want council to look at as well. So we're trying to encourage that form so that we get that feedback a lot faster, and we don't suddenly hear an incidence of medical treatments, through the hospitals due to intoxication or things like that. So hopefully that answers your questions. So,
yeah, it does. I was just, part of my interest here was just wanting to understand if we were ever going to be faced with heading something off the pass with a liquor licence being declined by regional public health, for example, the MOH getting involved, because there's been behaviours and things that we're not aware of, and we're not in a position as a local authority to support those licence holders as well.
right.
So that sounds to me like there's some really good things happening in that space, and I'm encouraged by that.
Yeah, so we've sort of installed a different philosophy here, which I've brought from other councils that I was in, is that to engage up front and early. And we did recently, well, last year we did with the rave, in terms of that was a massive event for over here and the first of its kind, and had such unique scenarios. But by talking early and getting our partners involved, our other agencies, meant that we could nullify or mitigate or raise with them our concerns, and therefore it's up to them to where they're going. Most of our operators over here, I know the one you're thinking of in recent times, most of ours over here, we don't have that issue because most of, in my time and previous to mine, the alcohol space has been really sort of engaging. And that's something we're carrying forward, and Hazel's done an absolutely brilliant job at that. And that includes engaging with our clubs as well, so that our sports teams and sports clubs are getting the benefit and not the negatives. And encouraging the public when they do these special events to engage with us as well.
Oh, that's good. I feel myself that just out and about, because of course I live in the community as well, that space is happening really well.
Yeah, so Hazel and I have both had this discussion, and historically we've relied on what we call CPOs, so the sort of covert purchasing operations with the agencies to see if people were selling. Yeah, they're good, but they give you a snapshot. So Hazel and I are very, Hazel's front-footing compliance checks on our own back to make sure that our operators are duty managers' names are up and they're not selling wines. They've got their training schemes and everything set out, and they comply with everything. We want to front foot that so that we're not playing catch up, so we're ahead of it. But it's also engaging with them so that we can give our advice and expertise for them as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, Hazel's running that. So
Oh, you can pass that on.
I will do.
Yeah.
Councillor Hart.
Hi, Sam. Look, I've just got a quick question. So in terms of events, typically what would be the optimal period to get all paperwork and so on done? How many days is it normally?
For the applicant to get it to us, we would.
For the whole, the approval process for the event, etc.
So we always try and push 20 working days beforehand. That's set in legislation, so that's where that should come in. Our turnaround is as fast as we can for special events. The better the applicant can give us all the information also helps us. We've been blessed, and this council should really acknowledge both past and current DLC members and commission chair, and they've been absolutely brilliant. So they've been a godsend for us, and that they can turn it around. We're also blessed in that the relationships we built with the agencies, they're willing to work with us to get that as fast as we can. So our turnaround rates for applications, everybody's indicative of a 6 to 8 week period. I think Hazel's got hers down to a 30 working day period, and continuing to get that through. Special licenses, we always try to get it a week before. I like a bit of breathing space in case something wrinkles up. But we've turned around a special license within 48 hours. But they're the exception rather than the rule. So we're trying to educate people to say, get it to us no less than 20 working days. Gives us time to be able to look at your application, rectifying situations, get your agencies to apply, because they have statutory 15 working day period to apply, so they can take 15 working days. But again, due to the relationship that Hazel and others have worked out, we're in a really great space with them, turning them around really fast. Around the vines we've just done, because unfortunately they had a set date, COVID. They've come up with a date that's really fast and we've already turned it around for them. So we try as hard as we can to work with the applicants. But the responsibility, again, it's like anything, if you can produce me a really great application with everything there, it just shortens down the processing time for us.
That's great.
No worries.
Russell.
I just sort of responding in a wider sense to Councillor West's original question in terms of information. We've got trend with point was made about maybe the information going back in time. We were asked and we've provided trend and visual information to paint a picture of what we do and how we're going through time. So that's another reason why maybe there's a little bit more information than what you've seen in pretty much previous months, but it is that response to trend visual use.
So, thank you much.
Councillor.
Yeah, Rick, before you run away.
Oh, okay.
I know you were. Seems to we've had a rush on attacks on pets and attacks on dogs, people in the last period. Can you comment on that and what's happened to those dogs, particularly the ones that attacks on persons?
What's the number we've got there? Three.
And five attacks on persons, 11 on other animals. And the previous month was 5 total, so it's a threefold increase.
Right. Just trying to think that I signed that many off. Yeah, we had a bit of a flurry. Again, the trend seems to be, since COVID's quieted down because a lot of people were home and therefore they were looking after it. There has been an increase of people walking around with their dogs on leads. We've had a few to do with chickens and cats.
Attack chicken.
Yeah.
The chicken attacking or the cat attacking?
No, unfortunately, the chicken was on the legs. So we've had some of those, and with cats, quite sort of walking into paths of dogs. With persons, we have seen an increase with couriers. We've noted that we've had some, I was going to say substitute, but that's wrong, relieving courier drivers, and therefore we're looking at increasing our education around that and what they're doing. That's probably the only trend that I've seen in regards to that.
So when there's an attack on a person, what's the procedure that happens then?
We undertake an investigation, so there's both statements with the victim and the dog owner, and then the collection of that information is presented with recommendations as to what happens. And that can range from a formal warning right through to a classification.
Are there any other questions, either of Mr. Mead or Russell? Yes, ma'am.
Rick, I just wondered if I could get, you've got the incident report for the dogs, and on it you've got wandering dogs, and then you've got uncontrolled off the leash and urban dogs. I just wondered if they are one in some of those instances, whether they're the same dog and they come under two categories, or whether they're separate incidents. Or can I get you to clarify that?
I'd have to clarify, yeah. I wouldn't want to put you in the wrong direction. My assumption would be that they would be separated, but I may be making a pure assumption. So if I can clarify that,
That'd be
I might
great.
actually want to come back to that information as well.
Yep.
To ensure there's no bad one.
And I'll just say that my dogs are in there for the lost dogs and found dogs.
For that period.
Social media.
Did you take those reports if they're at social media? You want to see my dog?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And
Chickens.
Is that we have noticed that social media has increased in terms of notifications without coming to us. And so we're seeing a lot more things of it, but we're not getting it. That reflects in terms of our impoundments as well. So we're not picking up dogs because by the time we're finding out through Facebook, they're usually resolved. Because the concern I have as an officer is that how do people ensure that the person that's rocking up to the door is the actual owner? Because what we do is we scan them for microchip numbers and for tags as well to ensure that the owner is the owner. And this is a phenomenon that's going through the country, and the same questions are going through different offices and councils. As, you know, there are some undesirable people that are picking up dogs for the wrong reasons. It's just something to be aware of that, well, yep, it's great that you put it on Facebook, but also drop us a line so we can ensure that the right owners are getting their dogs.
Exactly.
Okay, any other questions of either Rick or Russell?
I have a question for Russell.
Brenda?
Yeah. You're a book there, Rick. With number 6 bylaws, and we're having a look at the trees and hedges, 55 notices were sent out by council. How many of those notices have been completed? And how much have the people complied, and you're no longer having to take any further information? Because I see that we've got 14 litter incidences we've taken out and 1 resulted in an infringement. But we don't have those same stats for the trees and hedges.
So lucky I didn't move, isn't it? We've come to the same conclusion as, and it was raised with me by another member in regards to breaking that down further in terms of the first notification, second notification,
Right.
and then when we go to actually getting our contractors in there to actually do the work as well. Off the top of my head, this is pure speculation by me, that it is generally be a high number that after the first notification that they actually rectify. there'd be a smaller number of second letters and a very, very small number of incidents where we've actually contracted someone to do something. But that's one of the things we're going to break down further for the next one, so that
Yeah, I think
you can see that, notification difference, so that we've sent out 55, 98% have rectified the situation out of that first letter, we're chasing this and that.
So Alex asked it and I asked it from.
Yeah, cool. So, yeah, we've taken that on board, we'll be changing that ourselves.
We're having a twin moment.
That's right.
Okay, any other questions?
Sorry, just not a question, but a comment. Talking of trees and hedges, it's coming into autumn, so there are a lot of leaves that fall off the trees and go into the gutters and private gutters. And I know this has been a problem in Greytown in the past. Do we have a process for getting rid of those leaves and trash, the gutters in the roadside, so we?
Yeah, Tim monitors that through asset services and roading.
And you signal the topic, which is comes up during the year, particularly winter and storm events. So getting ahead of getting the inspections and clearance done before rain events happen. So that topic, you've signalled it an earlier topic as well.
Good point, Brenda, thank you. Anything else? All right, there is no further action required, having received the report. Thank you for your time, Ms. O'Leary. Now we move on to item C3, the alcohol bylaw control. Well, no, we don't. We move to the action items report at C2. Do I have a mover to receive the report? Thank you, Councillor West, seconded, Councillor Fox. All those in favour?
Aye.
That's carried. Are there any questions for officers of the action items themselves? 3 there.
Just a minute, could we?
Councillor West.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Action item 300. Are we still working with there are 4 questions. There are 3 questions on there, but the last question is like a combination of that would entail 2 different councils. One which we're no longer working with, and one which we are working with. I'm just wondering whether we need to split that question because half the question is being resolved. Does that make sense?
Yes. So what, in being an update about this situation of the pound, our focus is to provide a cost-effective solution and come back to you for consideration of yay or nay or not for South Wye and Carlton. So I believe you're right in your point.
Okay. Any other comments on the action items outstanding? Most of them seem to be subsumed in current processes. All right, we'll move on now to the alcohol bylaw control.
From a bureaucratic perspective, did we receive? Yes. I must have missed that one.
Thank you, but Amy, you we received the alcohol.
Yes, I'll agree with
that. All those in favour?
Aye.
We're well received. Ms. Yates, please continue.
Thank you. Just a straightforward report to advise the committee that Office is about to commence a review of the provisions of the liquor bylaws, the Featherstone's concentrate on the Featherstone CBD bylaw, and then the subsequent bylaw that added in the mechanism for enabling controls for events. They are due to be replaced, and we would like to commence a very concerted effort to get those replaced ahead of, as we know, Toast hopefully is looming, and so it would be good to take stock of the current circumstances
And we are required to consider a lot more evidence under the revised provisions of the LGA as to whether there is a need for example, permanent bans. So we would need to consider whether if it's still appropriate for Featherstone CBD to have a permanent ban around that. So there's quite a lot of work that's involved, and we would need to carry out robust engagement before putting together any statement of proposal and consider under the requirements of the LGA to have to really consider whether a bylaw is the appropriate mechanism for these types of controls. And so we will put together a project plan and we'll circulate that to the committee. So that so you can see where the engagement is and who we're engaging with, and we'll most likely run a workshop as well. We know that there are concerns across different areas, different community groups, so it's enabling everyone to have some input at this end rather than before we go through and put out any statement proposal and then go out to public consultation through the special consultative procedure. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor West.
Does anyone else think someone else can go first? Okay. What other bylaws does the South Wairarapa District currently have in place other than with regards to the alcohol control?
So there are the two bylaws that are in the report that the first bylaw just concentrated on the Featherstone CBD area, and then going back through our documents, it looked like that wasn't, I'm not quite sure whether that had been revoked or whether the second bylaw came in. It's effectively the same provisions around Featherstone, but it did introduce that mechanism for allowing temporary bans in public places. So those were those two provisions, but having discussions with officers, I know that there are different provisions for example, things for parks and reserves, and they tend to be within management plans and they're not consistent, and it's actually taking a fresh look at those to see whether it's actually appropriate for them to be in the bylaw, if that, if there is a need for them to be controlled. In my view, it's more appropriate for it to be actually in a bylaw if there is a need. So it's just really taking the opportunity to be more current with our thinking and getting that evidence and having discussions with people where there may be concerns.
To follow up that, I presume then that logically you would be heading down the track of having an all-encompassing bylaw for all three areas rather than having one town separate again.
Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, in response to that, the reason why Featherstone got placed under a liquor ban was due to a youth.
I remember why it was, but
so I don't think it was right to actually add that to other areas because they weren't causing, other areas weren't causing problems.
So we would really need to demonstrate now what the evidence was. We would have to liaise quite closely with the police and health on, are there actual issues? Do they exist? The extent of what those issues are, and then even then whether a bylaw is an appropriate way to actually deal with those issues, or whether it would be something else like community education, neighbourhood control, those sorts of things. So we have to have quite a good analysis of what the problem is and what we need to do to address it.
Thanks, Karen. Any other questions? Well, we have a recommendation to note that officers will, do I have a mover to note that officers will commence a review of the Featherstone Liquor Control Bylaw 2010 and the South Wairarapa Liquor Control Bylaw 2011, and will report back to the committee on the outcome of the review and any recommendations regarding a replacement of the bylaw. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Glenso. Seconder, Councillor Plummer. All those in favour? Aye. We're done. That was a very doggy meeting.
Oh.
Oh, I know. Should we make time for